So we have never met before. We're going to learn about each other on this podcast. It'll be a fun experiment. So I'm looking forward to it. All I know is that you have a business called Presta. So what is Presta? What's a 30-second pitch?
Yeah, so I'm one of the two co-founders of Presta. Presta helps traditional financial institutions like small business lenders who struggle to lend to businesses because their lending process can be really hard to navigate. It helps those types of institutions lend faster, more efficiently to the businesses they're looking to serve, allowing them to really grow their business, build better relationships, and spend a lot less time managing back office tasks that today consume a lot of their team's time, and create really challenging experiences for the business owners they're looking to serve.
Cool. So you're interacting with the lenders, or are you also interacting with the businesses?
Our primary customers are the lenders, but by virtue of building the workflow software that we have, we also have the lenders as customers. So the business owners who are applying for loans from those lenders using our platform too.
Gotcha. Okay. So how did you get into this space?
Yeah, it started maybe really 5 or 6 years ago. Before jumping into entrepreneurship, I first started my career working at a management consulting firm, and then from there jumped over to working at a nonprofit that was focused on doing economic development work. This was a couple of years ago. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio at the time. And while I was working at that nonprofit, I started to see a lot of these challenges that businesses faced in like communities around Cleveland, not dissimilar in many ways from communities across Michigan, where business owners were really having a hard time connecting to the capital they needed to grow their company. Mm-hmm. And the more I learned about those challenges, the more I wanted to kind of get my hands dirty with helping to address some of the pain points that I was seeing in that process. And that's what led me to leave this nonprofit that I was working at the time and jump into entrepreneurship. My co-founder and I, Leo, we started our first company in 2019, and it was focused on the equity side of economic development. So we built a marketplace that helps cities raise equity capital for new real estate development. We worked on that for a couple of years, and in doing so, just continued to hear from a lot of people who were using our product at the time, like, okay, cool, thanks for helping us out on helping connect with equity investors, but really, it's like really hard for us to apply for a loan, and especially through as COVID emerged and a lot of businesses were applying for relief loans or grants. We kept hearing more and more about it from both business owners as well as organizations who were tasked with dispersing that relief capital, that like the process for getting that money in the hands of the people who it was intended for was really broken. Yeah. And so that was ultimately some of the early catalysts that led us to want to start working on Presta. And yeah, it led us to where we are now.
Yeah. So you started the other company. Well, so it's a different company in 2019.
Different company, yep.
So you did that in 2019, 2020 happens, and I'm sure that changed your perspective on everything. Because like you said, there's just people needing access to the grants, these different types of loans. So that was a rapid education for you.
Yeah, totally. It was really interesting. I think like one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about being an entrepreneur is you just learn all the time. Yeah. And so the first company was called the Opportunity Exchange. And yeah, we started it, and then 12 months later, COVID happened. And our primary customers for that company were government economic development teams. And so the entire focus of their work changed overnight. And for us to then, learn and be responsive to like, okay, well, what we were originally working with you on is no longer kind of top of your list. It's maybe not even on your list anymore. How else can we help? That really led us down the trajectory of starting to uncover some of these problems that we're now solving today. We were fortunate in being able to, mentioning that they were a different company, we were able to exit the Opportunity Exchange to another civic tech organization called Blue Dot, who's continued a lot of the work that we started with the Opportunity Exchange as a way for us to then have a clean focus as we were getting started on Presta.
That's awesome. I've worked with a bunch of founders, and the number one complaint I always hear, especially locally, is about access to capital. So I'm happy to hear that you're doing something that will make it easier for these small businesses to access capital, because it sounds like you're making it easier for the lenders to then give that money out. So is this like a hyper local component? Like these are local lenders giving to local businesses, or theoretically are those lenders from anywhere in the country or world able to connect elsewhere?
Typically the lenders that we are working with tend to be fairly geographically focused. So to give some examples, Lenders who use Presta cover everything from like local and regional community banks to what are called community development finance institutions, CDFIs, sometimes even city or county revolving loan funds. So all of these organizations tend to specialize in providing capital to small businesses. Sometimes their process might vary, but a lot of them really are very like community based in their work, whether explicitly through the requirements of the funding they get or just through their mission. All these organizations lend and have a really strong community footprint. And so it's really exciting to be like able to work with a lot of those organizations and help, through the software that we're building, feel like we're really empowering a lot more of a strong like capital ecosystem in the different communities that we're working in.
That's awesome. Well, then I'm really glad that you're building it here in my community because I'm sure we're benefiting from it. All right. So where are you in this journey? You have a launch product, you have customers. Where are you?
Yeah, we're talking to maybe 3 or 4 weeks after we've sort of formally launched the product. Yeah. So the timeline of Presta was we started it just over a year ago, March, April timeframe of 2022. We were able to close our first round of funding in late October of last year. Started bringing on team, building the product, and we launched with our first 5 customers mid-March this year. So now that's where we're at. We've got folks using the product. We've grown the team and are looking forward to continuing to have more folks using the product and starting to learn a lot from the people who we have using it today.
That's incredible. So in less than an 18-month window, you launched this company, you got the funding, you built out the team, you got customers. That's exciting. That's fast. That is very fast. Yeah.
You see, maybe I'm a little tired today. You can.
It's just that. Oh man, that is great. So that's a faster timeline than I usually see. So what do you think was your like secret sauce, if you're willing to share it, for moving that fast? Because you had to form your story that you probably didn't even know your story day one. You're just like, we think we kind of have an idea here, but you had to form that story, then go tell it to investors and tell it to customers and convince them. How did you like make that happen so quickly?
I credit it a lot to great mentorship and being able to learn from a lot of people who had done it before us. I think that's like I mentioned that one of the most exciting things about being an entrepreneur over the course of the past couple of years has been just how much you learn through this experience. A lot of that learning, you can shortcut a lot of the learning if you're talking to people and trying to understand what they learned along their journey. Yeah. We were really fortunate last summer to be part of the Techstars Boulder FinTech cohort. And so we were able to learn a ton through that experience. And Techstars is an amazing organization. They have really, really strong mentorship through their program. And so, that helped us a ton. Similarly, the importance of like entrepreneurial networks and just having community of founders to learn from. There were so many people in Cleveland who were our peers who were able to like help us kind of brainstorm ideas or bat around thoughts or give us feedback on our story or what we were working on. There's surely like we had a company previously and had gone through some of these steps before, but there's no way that we'd be doing what we're doing today if it weren't for just a ton of support and the ability to learn and tap into like the knowledge that a lot of other people have accumulated along the way.
The company that you had before in 2019, was that a venture-backed company as well?
No, so that was bootstrapped. So that's a big difference between the two. And I think like personally, for me, that was a big part of what was exciting about Presta was with the first company, the Opportunity Exchange, it was bootstrapped and we learned a ton through that. But it was also in a much smaller market with a much smaller opportunity for impact. And that was a big reason why when we started to see these larger problems related to access to debt, where both Leo and I were realized like, oh, there's bigger problems out there to solve. And solving them will require more resources. That was really exciting. And it, continue on the theme of learning, a totally new experience to be a part of something with this type of potential. Yeah. And so, that was a really exciting, motivating factor for me being like, let's jump in and do it again.
Cool. Awesome. I'm excited to see your third venture. I want to see if you go bootstrapped or venture back for that one, because you're seeing both sides of the spectrum now. But is there any tips that you can give beyond? I know you said having the mentors and the support network was really helpful, but as a first time fundraiser for your company, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first set out to go raise the money? You had a lot of success quickly, so maybe you didn't learn too much along the way, but I'm just curious if there's anything that you wish you knew like day one.
Learned so much along the way, and picked up a lot of tips from people who'd done it before. I think there are two things that really stood out to us during our fundraising process. One is practice your story and think about your story and test your story, and try out your story on different audiences and understand kind of how your story helps paint the picture of your vision that you're trying to go for. It took us a little bit of time to figure out how to tell the story of like, we were working on this company and now we want to work on this one right afterwards, and they're kind of in a similar space, but different. Like, let me just tell you how they're different. Like, it was really messy at the beginning, and it took a lot of practice to get to being able to tell the evolution that led us to the point where we're at, and then and to be able to paint that picture on the opportunity that we're now working on.
Cool.
The other thing is practice your story and organization. We had probably just about 200 conversations over the course of fundraising. With that many different venture firms, and it required a lot of diligence, a lot of organization. We early on dropped the ball on a lot of things, and in hindsight realized a lot of things that we could be doing better. And a lot of it came down to just managing a really tight process. And so keeping track of the people who you've been reaching out to, understanding timing for follow-ups, having a really strong system in place to just make sure that things keep moving. Fundraising can take a long time. And so doing everything you can to kind of just like keep the ball rolling was a big learning along the way.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, it's interesting you said the 200 conversations. I think that's a rule of thumb that I've observed, and then even from my own fundraising experiences, it's 150, 200 conversations in order to close that round. I think another thing that I've heard and learned, I'm curious if you share this perspective, is to build your story and then stick with that story until you find the right people who believe in it. Is that the approach you took, or did you find yourself changing the story a lot based off of the audience?
I think it was very, very much, if I had to index on one of those two, it would be the first. And I think that's a big part of why it took so many conversations. It's a mutual it's a mutual process of getting to know each other, and you're making a long-term commitment to working together when you're fundraising. And you want to be entering into those relationships with a lot of confidence and with a lot of authenticity about why you're doing what you're doing on both sides. And so being consistent. Obviously, certain people have different motivations or interests that will attract them to what you're doing. And so tailoring your story to be relevant to them without compromising the fundamental nature of what you're working on and why it's exciting and what it means to you and what it could mean to them. That's really important, we found, and kind of sticking with that helped us remain confident, I think, during the process. Like, you get a ton of rejection, right? But sticking with that story that you believe in and working to find people with who that resonates with and building the relationship from there was a big part of the process.
Cool. This might be a question you get a bunch, but is there a world in the future where Presta is consuming Presta's products to take on debt in the future and raise some money?
Probably not.
Would never work.
We don't envision ever being a lender ourselves, or having our own like debt capital that we'd be lending out. Yeah.
Would you ever receive funds from someone who is using Presta? Would that ever be a possibility?
Say more.
Let's say you're raising some money in the future, and there's the lender you're going to. Would that lender happen to be using Presta? Do you think you'll ever benefit as a consumer of it as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's a lot of precedent that exists in fintech for models where, especially for companies that are working with community banks or credit unions, to have coalitions of those organizations form and become an investor in the company. That's definitely something that we've talked about with Presta, and through meeting a lot of other companies in the fintech space, have heard of a lot of really successful examples where companies are able to benefit from having a cohort of essentially customers who are also their backers and investors, because it can really accelerate traction, learning, adoption, the ability to iterate really quickly with a core set of customers, especially early on, can be really helpful. We haven't done it yet, but it is something that we talked a bit about during our initial fundraise. Yeah.
Interesting. So if you're right about Presta and Presta is wildly successful, how does the world look different 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And if that's even the right horizon, maybe you're thinking sooner or longer.
Yeah, 5-ish years, hopefully sooner for some of our early vision, but the world's different in a way where a business owner who's applying for a loan can get the loan in less than 24 hours instead of 90 days. Right now, a business that applies to one of the lenders we work with, they can be anywhere, 45 to 90 days to get that application through and approved. On Presta, it should happen in less than 24 hours. I mean, sometimes less than an hour.
Yeah, personally, in my own experience for one of my companies, we got access to Stripe Capital. So Stripe has their own financing system, which works out well because they have access to your funds. They know exactly how much you're making. But they made it available within 24 hours. And that was a real selling point for us. It's just so simple. I definitely didn't want to walk into a big bank, but didn't want to walk into even my local lenders and go through that whole process, the song and dance. So it sounds like you are going to make these lenders more competitive in that future world to be able to turn around funds in much shorter periods.
That's a big part of the trade-off, right? If you're like a business owner now, you'll be motivated by something that happens quickly, like you were saying. But a lot of the time, at the moment, you're forced to make a trade-off between speed and cost, right? So for getting a loan that you can get quickly, you'll often have to pay more for it through higher rates. If you're cool waiting a long time, you can get great rates, but it might take you like 2 to 3 months to sort out. And the average business in the US has like 2 to 3 weeks of cash on hand. So the timelines just don't work there. You have 2 to 3 weeks of cash and it takes 3 months to get a loan. Like those things don't add up. So a lot of businesses end up turning to more expensive digitally enabled products. We're trying to break that trade-off by enabling lenders who can offer great rates to be able to compete on the timelines that are more and more becoming sort of market standard.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you get the good rates and good turnaround times. That's going to be amazing.
That's the most exciting about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you share at all, like the mechanism for how you're making that possible? Are you providing a set of tools that haven't existed before? Are you just establishing a standard process that these lenders are following now? Like, can you share it all about that mechanism that makes that possible?
Yeah. So if you're a business owner right now looking for a loan, like what you probably start by, maybe you did look at your local bank. If you didn't walk into the branch, maybe you went to their website and like perused around and tried to find somebody. You like clicked to contact us and it opened to pop up, and you're like, I don't want to give me a call. I don't want to give them a call. There's no way to get in touch. And so had you gotten in touch, then what would have happened is, you'd be probably put in over email, you get some phone calls, maybe you get some PDFs to fill out, you send them back and forth, and pretty quickly you'd both be lost in the sauce. Like there's so much process going on, so many documents flying back and forth. You don't know which ones are finished. And then if you manage to make it through all that, then over time, there's no consistent place for you to be going, after you receive the money to pay it back. You're still managing this through many different tools and trying to cobble together this, all these tools in order to work your way through the process. We changed all that with Presta by bringing that all together onto one platform. So now there's one place where business owners and lenders can go to apply for loans, work through the application process, close the loan, receive funding, and make payments back on the loan, all in one place. That's really different from how it happens today. Most lenders that we talk to have between 3 to 7 different tools that they use to manage this process. And so bringing it all in one place just helps first streamline a lot of things. And then from there, there's a lot of efficiency building features that you can put in place to help make that process a lot faster.
That's awesome. You've done a lot of things right. Things have been going well for you so far. Would you mind sharing something that you did wrong along the way, or something that the first time you did it, you maybe took the wrong approach and now you've been able to turn around? Are you willing to share anything on that?
Yeah. There's a big difference. A across the two companies that we've run, and we learned a lot from the first experience around what is the as we like to think about it, kind of like what's the highest return on our founder time. So for our first company, Leo and I, we both have technical backgrounds, and we built and wrote all the code for the first company. And especially towards the end, that was a huge amount of the time that we were committing to running the business. And it really limited our ability to think about any of the other important questions that we probably should have been thinking about when we were running the company. After we exited it, we did a lot of reflection around that point, and that was a big motivator for us to take Presta with the venture-backed route, to be able to have more resources early, to bring on a lot more people onto the team, and who have a lot more expertise and experience building than we did. Even still, though, it was hard when we were getting started. I was still writing code on the front end of Presta, and now that we have a full team, a lot of my code's being rewritten, fortunately. But I think that was a big learning for us, is just thinking about, where do you really excel in terms of the experience you have, the skills you have, what gives you energy, what gets you excited about working, how do you blend those things together? And for us, we realized that although it worked with our first company, it was not the best way for us to be spending our time. And it still takes a lot of work. Like right now, I'm writing tests for Presta, and I like, part of me just wants to go do that, and I just know that's not what I should be spending all my time doing. So it's a constant struggle to just think about, like, what is the right area of for you to be focused on when there are so many things that could be grabbing your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I know you got to run, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. But before we sign off, can you let the world know where they can find Presta?
Yeah, letspresta.com.
Letspresta.com. All right. Well, thank you very much. Great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.